It's been a big year for Taylor Swift and not so much Kanye West. But even so, I have a lot of friends on both sides of the Kanye Taylor divide. So, in a lot of conversations, I've had to answer for my obsession with the other artist's music. Because for some reason, Kanye and Taylor are my two favorite artists of all time pretty easily. So, as different as these two are, both as musicians and as people, I wanted to see if I could find some common ground between them. Today, I'm challenging myself to find some Kanye West and Taylor Swift songs that go together in some way, whether it's musically or in subject matter or in how they relate to the artist's personal lives. In honor of the Eras Tour, I'll be taking one song from each of Taylor Swift's 10 albums and pairing it up with a Kanye West song, also all from different albums, just not in order. A lot of these songs are songs I really like, and so some of the connections might be a bit of a stretch, but without further ado, let's get into Debut. So, admittedly, Debut was one of the harder albums to pick a song from just because 16-year-old country Taylor is probably about as far away from Kanye West as you can get. I decided to choose Tied Together with a Smile, which is apparently about one of Taylor's high school friends who had an eating disorder at the time despite being like a beauty queen, pageant princess, overall, just really popular girl. In the song, Taylor sings about how this girl is the only one who doesn't see her own beauty and that she's tied together with a smile, but she's coming undone, essentially saying that she's pretending to be okay, but inside she's having trouble holding it all together. In the second verse, she goes on to talk about how she's giving her love away like pocket change, which to me feels like an unhealthy way of dealing with some deeper problems and insecurities. The song just goes to show how sometimes the most successful and well-liked people in our lives might be going through something without us knowing. Kanye comments on a similar idea from a completely different angle in All Falls Down, which is from his debut album, The College Dropout. Funnily enough, while Debut is probably my least favorite Taylor Swift album, The College Dropout is probably my favorite Kanye West album. Even so, All Falls Down similarly addresses the covering up of deeper insecurities, but instead through the lens of consumerism. In the first verse, Kanye talks about a girl who is really self-conscious, and so instead of finishing school, decides to do hair so she can make money and buy what she wants. Kanye then raps about himself and his own obsession with watches, clothes, and shoes, which are all to cover up his own insecurities. Just like the girl Tied Together with a Smile is about, Kanye is extremely successful. He's living the American dream. But it turns out that sometimes the people highest up got the lowest self-esteem. For Fearless, I decided to choose The Best Day. It's a really simple and sweet song in which Taylor expresses her appreciation for her mom, who has always been a huge part of her career and her music. In the first verse, she paints a nostalgic picture of a beautiful fall day from her childhood, and in the second verse, she sings about a time when her mom made her feel loved and comforted after her friends had been mean to her. In the chorus, she does that thing where she changes up the lyrics and wording each time, but always comes back to the same idea. Each day with her mom is the best day. And while I'm not going in order through Kanye's albums, he also coincidentally has a song dedicated to his mom on his sophomore album, Late Registration. It's called Hey Mama. In this song, Kanye tells the world about what his mom has done for him and says he just wants to make her proud. Like The Best Day, Kanye goes into detail on specific times in his childhood when he felt loved and cared for, from homemade chicken soup to working late nights to riding a bike with training wheels. He says that he'll love his mom until she doesn't hurt anymore, and that he'll be so successful that his mom won't have to work anymore either. So you can really tell through these two songs the appreciation that both Taylor and Kanye have for their moms. On Speak Now, there's a song called Never Grow Up. Taylor wrote the song when she was in her late teens, so she was really just entering adulthood at the time. It's a really sweet song about the innocence of childhood, dedicated to her friend's newborn baby. Taylor sings about how simple and easy being a kid is, how a teenager's biggest problem might be how embarrassed it feels to have your mom drop you off at the movies. Taylor tells this kid to never grow up because she's just now starting to understand that being an adult isn't all it's cracked up to be. She doesn't want this kid to feel the pain that she's felt of having her heart broken and the loneliness she feels going to bed in a big city all by herself. Meanwhile, Violent Crimes off Kanye's 2018 album Ye sounds like it would be about something completely different, but Kanye is saying something similar just from a different point of view. He raps about not wanting his daughters to grow up, not just because of the troubles of adulthood, but specifically because of who he is. Finding out that Kanye didn't write this song himself admittedly lessens the impact a little, but it's still heartbreaking to see Kanye grapple with the idea that how he behaved towards women in the past is exactly what he's trying to protect his daughters from. He's the devil rebuking the sin. He's scared of his daughters growing up and having to deal with weirdos on the internet because of their famous father, and that they might get into toxic or abusive relationships in the future. It's interesting to see the contrast between how a young Taylor Swift and a much older Kanye West approach the same idea of never growing up very differently. To be honest, this right here is why I decided to make this video. These two songs might actually be the least related of any pairing in this video, but as a Taylor Swift and Kanye West fan, I've always grouped these two songs together in my head. They're both really long songs, one being Taylor's longest and the other being one of Kanye's longest, and they both come from albums with red covers, I guess. But the real reason I always group these two songs together is that they really showcase the respective geniuses of these two artists. All Too Well 10-minute version, Taylor's version, From the Vault, is to me a genuine feat of songwriting. It's essentially a really long diss track on Jake Gyllenhaal, but it just has all the things you love about a Taylor Swift song. The song shows that Taylor is an excellent storyteller. She gets very specific and detailed about the things in her life that move her emotionally. She gives her listeners an extremely deep vocabulary to live their own emotions through her experiences. It has an extremely catchy and singable melody throughout the verses and the chorus that have just enough musical twists and turns to keep it interesting throughout. And it has some of the best and most memorable lyrics from her entire catalog. Lines like, "You kept me like a secret, but I kept you like an oath," and "You call me up again just to break me like a promise, so casually cruel in the name of being honest." The first time I heard it, it blew my mind because it brought me somewhere emotionally where I had never been before, somewhere I didn't know I could be without experiencing any of these things firsthand. Runaway from My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy has been described by some as Kanye's magnum opus, which I would probably agree with. Runaway is a really heavy, emotional, and beautiful song that comments on a lot of things, like Kanye's arrogance, his sadness, and his relationships. It's a song that clearly means a lot to Kanye. Just look at when he sang it for Kim at the Free Larry Hoover benefit concert. It blew my mind for very different reasons than All Too Well, though. In fact, some of Kanye's lyrics on this track are pretty questionable. But what Kanye does better than almost anyone is the pushing of musical boundaries, trying things that no one else has tried, and no one knows that they want until he does it. Those 28 piano notes leading into that beat drop was just an unbelievable musical sequence upon first listen. It's a little hard to pinpoint exactly how Runaway made me feel, but like All Too Well, it brought me somewhere emotionally I hadn't been before. Runaway also shows off Kanye's ability to bring out the best in his collaborators, featuring an excellent verse from Pusha T. And to cap off the song, there is a 3-minute vocoder solo, which, again, I had never heard anything like before, but I immediately loved. So if nothing else, you can take away from this video that I think All Too Well 10-minute version and Runaway are works of genius. 1989 is maybe Taylor's purest pop album, and so I picked Blank Space, which I think is pretty representative of the album as a whole. Even with the enormous success Taylor has seen recently, Blank Space, which is from 2014, is still her most streamed song on Spotify. Like 1989 reinforces the idea that Taylor was a pop superstar, Blank Space plays into the idea that Taylor was this serial dater. I'm not sure that accurately describes her as a person, but it certainly works for the song. Something that sits just a little bit below the extremely catchy and energetic nature of the song is a very clear power dynamic between Taylor and the dude she's talking to. In the song, Taylor plays into this image of a crazy manipulative girl who literally toys with dudes. Her relationships are a game that she very much rules over and the men in her life play. It reminds me a little of Stronger from Graduation, which also happens to be Kanye's most mainstream, even pop-adjacent album. And coincidentally, Stronger is also still Kanye's most streamed song on Spotify, even though the song came out in 2007. So again, a very popular, catchy song with wide mainstream appeal, but like I said, there is a little bit of similarity between Stronger and Blank Space in subject matter. In the verses, you can clearly see a difference in power between Kanye and this girl, with Kanye saying she could be a secretary and that she should bow in the presence of his greatness, how there are thousands of girls like her and only one Kanye, and that she would do anything for some clout. So while for very different reasons, Taylor and Kanye actually adopt somewhat similar attitudes towards their love interest in these two songs. These next two songs come from each artist's most kind of out there album. Reputation is a pretty controversial album, as there are some Swifties who love it and some who aren't the biggest fans. I really love a few songs on the album, namely Delicate and Getaway Car, among a few others, but for me it still ranks pretty low against the rest of her albums. The track I want to draw attention to is Ready For It. Specifically, I want to focus on its structure. It features a very maximalist electronic production style, which is common throughout Reputation. However, the chorus actually features this very airy, minimalist beat, which I personally think sounds amazing. It's probably the only part of the song I like, actually. So between the verses and the chorus, the song alternates between a very heavy maximalist sound and a minimalist kind of floaty sound. Meanwhile, Kanye's album Yeezus seems almost like a counterpart to Reputation. Yeezus itself is again kind of controversial within the Kanye fanbase, with some who love it and some who hate it. Like Reputation, Yeezus definitely takes a lot of risks and features a lot of, albeit very different, electronic music. I personally think it's alright, and again rank it relatively low against the rest of his albums. If we look at Bound To, which is the last track on Yeezus, we can see that there's a structural similarity to Ready For It. Throughout the verses, Kanye enlists a signature technique of his at this point, flipping an older R&B or soul song into a beat. Then in the chorus, the background pretty much just turns into this really heavy sounding synth. So it also has this alternation between a heavier and lighter sound between the verses and the chorus, just like Ready For It. Bringing it back to the mom discourse, let's talk about Soon You'll Get Better. Over a decade after The Best Day, Taylor is again writing about her mom, but this time in hopes that she'll beat cancer for the second time. This song is an extremely vulnerable and real look into Taylor's life amidst a relatively bubbly and upbeat pop album in Lover. Soon You'll Get Better gives off a much different vibe than the likes of London Boy and Cruel Summer. It's not a lyrically dense song at all. Taylor is just pleading with the universe that her mom will get better. She states it as a fact because she simply cannot accept the alternative. Who will she go to if her mom can't be there for her? She's so desperate that she's even praying to Jesus again. To me, there's a similar energy to Kanye's Moon, which comes off his most recent album, Donda. Donda in its entirety is dedicated to and named after Kanye's mom, again showing the impact his mom had on his life. Unfortunately, Donda West passed away in 2007 following multiple complications from cosmetic surgery. While Moon isn't explicitly about Kanye's mom, I think it's fair to assume some of its lyrics might apply to how Kanye felt about his mom's passing, which was 14 years ago at the time of Donda's release. Moon is a very mellow and perhaps even soothing song, thanks to vocal contributions from Kid Cudi and Don Toliver. I Want to Go to the Moon, Don't Leave So Soon is a lyric that can be taken a lot of different ways, but regardless, I think it conveys the idea of, again, pleading with the universe and trying to reach something you can't see. Like Soon You'll Get Better, Moon isn't a lyrically dense song at all, but the repetitive and simple nature of both these tracks really add to a sense of yearning that I think is quite clearly apparent. For folklore, I decided to pick Mirror Ball. Taylor likens herself to a disco ball, always spinning and shining, reflecting everything around her. She's on her tallest tiptoes, changing everything about her just to fit in and reflect the other people in her life. This could be taken as the way Taylor behaves whenever she's in love, with her shattering into a million pieces with each heartbreak. Or it could be taken as the way in which Taylor feels towards her fans. She's always performing, showing her fans every version of themselves as they experience their own emotions through her music, and constantly trying her hardest to keep her fans entertained like she's on a trapeze. What stands out to me the most is the perpetual and repetitive nature of Mirror Ball, and the idea that she keeps on spinning and shining is reflected in the very steady, mellow, and almost dreamlike qualities of the song itself. Waves off the Life of Pablo sounds completely different, but I think the cyclical nature of Waves can be compared to the constant rotation Taylor describes in Mirror Ball. Waves comments on the nature of Kanye's relationships, essentially saying that waves have ebbs and flows, but they never truly go away. Waves never die. In the same way that Taylor perpetually spins and shines, Kanye's past loved ones continue to have a perpetual impact on his life. Even when loved ones leave, the feelings that those relationships brought about continue to live on. The beat in Waves rapidly repeats throughout the duration of the track, again showing the persistent nature of Kanye's feelings for those who may or may not still be in his life. So although they sound completely different, Waves and Mirrorball are both very steady and somewhat static musically, reflecting the cyclical nature of their respective themes. Marjorie is one of those songs that is good, but I just can't listen to very often because it hits you so hard in the feels. Taylor has a number of songs like this, like Ronin and Epiphany, for example. Marjorie is about Taylor's late grandmother, who was an opera singer and is actually credited with background vocals on this track. You can hear her quite clearly if you listen closely to the outro. Taylor sings about how she wishes she had cherished her time with her grandmother more dearly, how she would have asked her more questions and kept grocery store receipts. But the main message of the song is that Marjorie's dreams, lessons, and spirit continue to live on through Taylor. Over and over, Taylor repeats that what died didn't stay dead, you're alive in my head. Her grandmother taught her to be clever, to be kind, to be polite, and to be powerful. And as Taylor continues to carry her grandmother's legacy, in some ways it feels like Marjorie is still around. Similarly, Donda's legacy lives on through Kanye and even through his children. This is most evident in Only One, in which Kanye literally sings from Donda's point of view as if she's speaking to him from heaven. Only One is a single and isn't on an album. It came out between Yeezus and The Life of Pablo. As a standalone piece of music, I feel like it almost feels more significant and personal. Donda tells Kanye that he'll rise until the sky knows his name, that he's not perfect but he's not his mistakes, and that he'll become the man he always knew he could be. Donda cries when Kanye cries and smiles when Kanye smiles. And like Marjorie, it's like she's still there. There are no goodbyes, just hellos. The song ends with Donda telling Kanye to tell North about her, carrying her legacy on through the next generation. It's again one of those songs I can only listen to so much because it's so emotionally potent. And just like Marjorie, the point is that our loved ones will live in our hearts forever. Weirdly enough, the word that comes to mind for these two songs is the word droning. While You're On Your Own Kid does contain lyrics about this boy that Taylor wanted to notice her, it also takes us through her feelings along her path to fame. And the prevailing feeling that comes from this journey is a feeling of loneliness. She's on her own, she always has been. She gave her blood, sweat, and tears, she hosted parties and starved her body. These were steps along the way to the fame and career she wanted. But at the same time, her friends from home don't know what to say to her, and bridges were burned, and things were lost along the way. There's simultaneously a celebration of her ability to overcome these obstacles and an acknowledgement of her loneliness in doing so. Musically, the song feels very steady, which I think contributes to the overall feeling that everything is, at the end of the day, just a part of the journey. And the outro, which I think can be described pretty literally as droning, shows that it's an ongoing one. Streetlights, which is one of my favorite songs from 808s and Heartbreak, carries a similar message. It's an extremely mellow and stripped down track that likens Kanye's journey, and maybe even life, to a long cab ride. He knows his destination, but he's just not there yet. And everything along the way, the fame, the money, the big moments, the people and relationships that come and go, are all streetlights that pass by. The lights are glowing and they stand out to him, but they're ultimately impermanent, as all things are. The loneliness that Kanye feels is palpable. Even if he was singing complete gibberish, the way the music just drones on and the way his voice sounds makes his feelings clear. And so, while we've often seen the flashy and glamorous aspects of Kanye and Taylor's lives, You're On Your Own Kid and Streetlights remind us that their careers may often feel like unending and lonely journeys to the top. So there you have it. 10 Taylor Swift songs paired up with 10 Kanye West songs. I genuinely love a lot of the songs on this list, so if you haven't heard some of them, or you don't really listen to either Kanye or Taylor's music, I suggest you check them out. If you didn't know, I haven't really made anything like this before, and might not in the future either. This idea kind of just started as a thought experiment, and then I started writing some of it down, and then I somehow ended up here. So I want to thank you for making it all the way through this really long video. I hope you enjoyed it, or at least learned something or found something interesting. Let me know if I missed anything super obvious, or if you thought some of these connections were a bit of a stretch. But yeah, that's pretty much it. See ya.